I have a sign displayed in my home that hangs just below a snapshot of my husband and I, and the sign reads, "We still do." You know, that sign, it reminds me, redirects me, and protects me from the world's wonky views of love, because our love is not a romantic movie where I wake up in the morning in full makeup in a pristine house and nothing on my to-do list but for my husband and I to hop in a little canoe and ride through a pond filled with swans. Hashtag Hollywood, hashtag unrealistic. Here's the thing about love. It's sometimes complicated, sometimes blissful. Some moments are incredible, but others incredibly difficult. Love breaks us, it makes us, it shakes out all the good and bad from us. It's the most beautifully painful, sacred surprise you could ever hope to grow through. It's a package deal. It's the thing that makes me less selfish and gracious. I need to be less selfish. I want the best version of love. So I need to bring the best version of me to my man each day and choose to make our love a little less complicated, a little more sweet, a little more inviting for the best version of him to take my hand and whisper, "Hey babe, we can do this." Relationships, whether through marriage or friendships or family, they're a gift. But during the harder moments, they don't really feel like a gift. But if we choose to look at them as the very thing that prunes us of our lesser qualities, our selfishness, and enables us to discover and live out Jesus' command to love, then they're great. Jesus said in John 15:12 and 13, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command." He gave this command along with the final "I am" statement. And can you believe we've reached our last week together? Oh, my hope for you and for me is that we've really discovered Jesus in a new way and invited him in closer than ever before. We've discovered how Jesus is the bread of life. He's that daily bread, the truth that we eat of every day, and how we not only need to ingest his words, but we need to digest them, taking them all the way in and making them part of who we are and how we live. He's the light of the world, and we learned how a woman was really considered pretty worthless by everyone else, became one of his first lights, one of his first evangelists, leading others to Jesus. And Jesus is the sheep gate. He lays down as he protects and defends us. And he's the good shepherd. And we got that beautiful picture of him guiding the sheep, us, down circular paths that always lead back to God and to the still waters so that we can lie down and rest satisfied in him. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. We learned how the resurrected King is bringing his resurrection power and his full life to you and to me. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus doesn't want us just walking around living like a shell of an existence. He wants us to experience a rare vitality and a fullness in the depth of our souls. And finally, we come to today's passage of Scripture and our final I am statement in John chapter 15. I am the true vine. You know, I really like paying attention to the descriptive words that go along with several of these I am statements. The good shepherd, the living water, the true vine. In other words, he's not just a source, but Jesus is the source for all things that are good, full of life, and full of truth. He's set apart for a holy purpose, and you know that because of our connection with him, we are too. When Jesus says, "I am the true vine," he's speaking to his disciples on the day before he'll be crucified. These are his last moments, just after they've eaten the Last Supper. And many researchers believe they're up on the roof of the upper room, which was a likely place for there to have been grapevines in the city. So what we're studying today are some of his final instructions. I hear these words in John chapter 15, every syllable, and I know that they were spoken with a different kind of intentionality, an urgency that Jesus wants us to really get this. And as we lean in, I want to make sure we see all the rich imagery with clarity. God is the divine gardener, the vine dresser. Jesus, the grapevine, much like the trunk of a tree, he's the main vine who provides all the nourishment to the branches. And you and I, we're those branches, destined and designed to bear much fruit. Remember this as we read verse 1 in its entirety and verse 2. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. The gardener is traditionally known as the vine dresser. The vine dresser was the caregiver of the vine. His greatest desire is that his vines would produce fruit. I love to visualize statements like this from the Bible, just coming alive in an everyday setting. Can you see God cresting the hill with dirt on his hands from the earth he created, smiling when his eyes reach the true vine? He makes his way to his treasured vine and he runs his finger down the branches, lifting up the fruit. The grapes, they're bending down, almost like they're bowing down in honor of the vine dresser. And he, the vine dresser, is smiling. The branches, surrendered to his pruning, are now even more fruitful than the last season. They've been richly nourished because they stayed absolutely connected to the true vine. And now the grapes have come, and the fruit is plentiful and rich. This is what glorifies the divine gardener. We discover this in John 15:8 when Jesus, the true vine, says, "This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples." Verse 2 goes on, "He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you." The vine dresser knows the seasons required to bear fruit. In the wintertime, the vine is pruned. And you know, the vine, it's tied up to a stake and all the branches are pruned off except one extending to the left and the other extending to the right. When I visited Israel the first time, I was absolutely captivated when I saw the pruned vines. They looked exactly like a row of crosses. Never does the vine remind us more of Calvary than in the pruning winter months. The pruning, that's what makes us look more like Jesus and prepares us to eventually bring forth fruit. And then after the winter comes the spring, which is when the lush green leaves and flowers appear. Then more time passes, and finally, in the summer, the fruit appears. There's a season for every stage of the vine: pruning, growing, producing. Finally, in the fall comes the harvest of all that fruit. The vine dresser is patient and he cares for the vine and its branches. And I think one of the best verses that shows the vine dresser's tender care comes in verse 3, which honestly, when I first read it, I was a little confused because it just seemed a little out of place. But with some context, I think you'll see the importance of verse 3. Jesus says to his disciples, "You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you." Now he's referencing a previous conversation that had taken place just a few chapters back in John chapter 13. Remember, this is all happening the same day. So it would be like when you and your friends go out shopping in the afternoon, and then you're all hanging out on the front porch after dinner later that day, and you recall a conversation that you had earlier. And for the disciples, that conversation was when they were enjoying the Last Supper. Jesus had just washed their feet, and he said, "You are clean, but not every one of you." Just as the disciples became clean, not by the washing of their feet, but by their faith, so do we as believers. As followers of Christ, we too are clean. He knows this is an important point to remind them just before he's going to the crucifixion. But there's a second layer of truth I really want us to draw from this. Often, when we are pruned, we mistakenly think that it's the time where God feels a little distant. But actually, it's the time when he's very, very close. Because to prune the branches, the gardener must be close enough to grasp them in his hand. And he's not just snipping them randomly. You see, the wise gardener holds those branches with his hand and cuts them at specific angles that he knows will direct the branch to grow in the best direction for the sun to aid in the production of the fruit. Just like Jesus came close to clean the disciples' feet, God comes close to prune and to clean the branches, his true vine. Cleaning and pruning come from the same root word, and both indicate an intimate time where God is close. He's personally holding us, touching us as individuals. And I don't know about you, but this really helps me to never look at pruning the same way. I love the thought of God holding me specifically in his hand and pruning me for the best way for me to produce the most fruit. Then verses 4 and 5 go on to say, "Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." The fruit of the vine is nourished from the root of the vine. The roots, they stretch all the way down deep to the water source below, sometimes reaching as far as 20 feet deep. This makes that vine so much more sustainable and incredibly unique from other plants, because most plants have to be watered from the top of the soil, but not the grapevine. The grapevine goes down deep in the soil to find the source of water. Feeding themselves, they go directly to the source. If they remain connected to that water source, then they can grow. Without water, they cannot grow. Now, doesn't this draw such a beautiful picture of the lesson we had earlier about the living water? Without remaining connected to the living water, Jesus, will never bear fruit. Bearing fruit is our most satisfying and most fulfilling purpose. So we must remain connected to the vine who carries that living water all the way to us, the branches. And then after the branch bears its fruit, it's time to harvest the fruit. Grapes are wonderful, but what's most valuable from the vine isn't the fruit itself, but the juice. And you know, here in Israel, it's common to refer to the wine as the vine's blood. Life is in the blood. And the way to preserve the life of the grape is through the pressing of it, the shedding of its blood. And the way to preserve our lives is through the shed blood of Christ, which leads to verse 6 and the warning. "If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned." I know this verse feels very dark, and it is. When it speaks of the branch being picked up and thrown into the fire to be burned, it speaks of people who have not yet made the choice to connect in a relationship with Jesus. You know, I think this really should make us all sit up and feel an even more urgent need to share our faith with all of those around us. There is a darkness, and it's eternal. And I know we really don't like often thinking about it. It's easier not to. But the awareness of every soul's desperate need for Jesus, for salvation, can mean life or death to the people all around us. And this leads us to verse 7 and 8. "If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples." Again, Jesus reiterates remaining, staying connected to the vine. You know, we seem to want to rush, hurry, get swept into the stresses of life. But Jesus, he's into the much slower rhythms of life, like dwell, abide, remain. This remaining connected to him, it changes everything in life, including what we desire. As we stay connected, whatever we wish for, it'll be shaped by this connection. We will have his desires, and his desire is that you bear much fruit, and that brings him the most glory and us the most joy. And what exactly does Jesus mean when it says remain in him on a daily basis? Well, remember the sign I mentioned that hangs over the picture of my husband and I that reads, "We still do," signifying that we make a choice every day to live out our love? It wasn't a one-time choice. It's a daily declaration. It's an internal decision to keep investing in our relationship. But even more crucial, I need to stay connected in my love relationship with Jesus with great intentionality. Jesus says in verses 9 and 10, "As the Father has loved me, so I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love." Now remember, we already looked at the exact command he's referring to here from verse 12. "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you." And if we were watching our love story with Jesus unfold on a screen, the music right here would crescendo as the moment we've all been waiting for. It's finally arrived when Jesus says in verse 11, "I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete." He's told us, "I am the vine. I am the light of the world. I am the good shepherd and the gate of the sheep, the bread of life, the resurrection, the way, the truth, and the life." He's told us all of that so that we can understand that it's our connection to him that keeps our souls alive and thriving despite whatever you face in life. It's the hope we have in him. It's the hope we have in Jesus and how he will lead us and feed us and tenderly care for us, and how most of all, he just wants us to be in love with him. Then all those empty places, those deep, sacred spaces within our souls can finally be satisfied because of him and him alone. Then our joy won't be based on the circumstances that roll in and out of our lives every day, but will absolutely be complete because of our certainty of who God is to us, the great I am. Yes, Lord, you are the one, the only one, who fully satisfies the cry of every heart.